The Healing Lives Center is a center for sex trauma and marriage education and transformation, and has the critical mission to strengthen that which God created and values, marriages and the nuclear family. Dr. Gilbert, your host, aims to provide important teaching on tough topics, great interviews and conversations, and tools just for you, all emphasizing a biblical worldview. Join us now with today's feature. Welcome to the Family Features Podcast. My name is Dr. Corey Gilbert, and today I have a great conversation with Bob Lotich. Thank you, Bob, for joining me.
Corey, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. And he's a best-selling author, award-winning blogger, follower of Jesus, my favorite part. And today we're going to have a great conversation about a really, really important but tough topic that so many couples have a lot of stress and issues with: money. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so I started as a mess financially. I think that's the best way to describe it. Had no idea what I was doing. And my parents did the best they could, just like most of our parents do the best that they can. But at the same time, you might have experienced this like I have. Like I talk to couples all the time who say, yeah, my dad said we just never talk about money in our house. And I always like scratch my head. Because I'm like, all right, how are we going to learn? Like, how are our kids going to learn if we're not talking about that? If we're not showing them, we don't have to tell them what our salaries are, whatever the thing is, but like not showing them how we're making financial decisions. Like, how are they going to learn? And what I've found, unfortunately, is that people are going to learn one thing or another. Like, they're going to establish beliefs about money one way or another. So if our parents who've been through a few things aren't teaching us, then we're going to be learning from our broke friends. We're going to be learning from Instagram influencers and how they're spending money. Not necessarily that they're teaching us financial wisdom, but like this wisdom, like we're going to be picking up their lessons and their beliefs. And so it's really important for us as parents, I think, to establish something there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. What got you into the talking about money? Besides starting off a mess.
Yeah, I don't know. So I started off a mess. That was kind of my journey, and God did so much, just kind of pulling me out of that and just continuing to reveal things to me about my own heart, about my own poor decisions I was making, could say it that way. And in all that, somewhere I just got this unction to start sharing what I was learning. And so this was going back to 2007. Somewhere in there, I remember talking to a friend and just saying, I just kind of want to write an article every day and post it online about what I'm learning about money, because the Bible says something about it, and I thought that was cool. So I want to kind of talk about that. He's like, that sounds like a blog. And I remember asking, like, what's a blog? I don't know what a blog is. Tell me what a blog is. And he explained what a blog was. I'm like, yes, that's it. That's what I want. I want to do that.
Nice.
And so I went out and bought a domain that night, started a blog, and and that was kind of like where the whole thing started for me, just getting the opportunity to share what I was learning, the mistakes I was making, the things I was improving on. And then that just kind of evolved from there into, a podcast, and now a couple books and courses and, whatever we can do to help.
Nice. And were you married then yet, or were you single at the time?
At that point I was married. Yeah. Okay. And so my wife, was kind of encouraging me, my cheerleader in the corner, to do it. And I'm really glad I did, because it's just been really fun. It's been good for me, learning out loud is really beneficial, but also we've been able to help a lot of people in the process too.
Right. Which why we do what we do is
right.
To make a difference and change people's lives. It's amazing how this is such a hot area. Top reason for divorce is money, but it doesn't really have to do with money. It's my relationship with money, my lack of conversations about money. I call it a revealer. Money is a revealer. It reveals the selfishness.
Exactly.
How much we're influenced by things. But you made a comment a minute ago, though, your kids, you have younger kids, all right?
Yeah. 8, 5, and 3.
8, 5, and 3. And so I had a conversation just a couple hours ago with one of my teenagers. We just got back from Boy Scout camp, and he still hasn't earned part of his way to camp. And so we were talking about, no, you still owe me a few $100s for half of camp. And how do they do it? Well, here they go get cans, and they take cans to the can place, and 10 cents a piece. And it's amazing how quickly that adds up. But it's like, you need to go earn it. Go mow a lawn. Yeah. Or my older son, he's actually at work right now on a farm. And so it's neat to see each kid's different, but instilling that money piece is a different wasn't done in previous generations as much.
Yeah. No, it is so important. And I tend to think, yeah, I'm like you. Like I want to teach our kids the importance of earning money and working. And so it's like I don't have, major philosophical problem with people giving allowances, but I really like the idea of you do work, you earn money for work, like instilling that, because as we both know, there's a lot of the youngest generation right now that doesn't understand that the way that they should. And I think, all throughout the Bible, we see that this was God's design, like for us to work. And so it's important.
Well,
Yeah.
one of these I've emphasized lately in some of the speaking that I've done in places was that look at back in Genesis, work was part of pre-fall.
Mm-hmm.
It was Adam worked the gardens. He was not sitting around drinking something, like he was working, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And part of the curse became it's going to be hard, and actually I think that's also more even beauty in that. But my son right now, he bought himself a car, and we paid half, and then now he's paying his insurance. But seeing that value, and it hurts when he had to buy tires. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. No one likes buying tires.
Oh, but to see how much of your money goes away, and yes, we help.
Yeah.
That idea of earning something is so different than, yay, here's your new car that you've not earned.
Well, yeah, and we all know this, like as adults, that you don't appreciate things when there's no skin in the game. When you don't have, it's through that sweat that like the refreshment is so enjoyable,
But it's part of that almost a mentality of how I love my kids, even. So I feel like I'm loving them by giving them things, and it's like, that's great. You feel that way, but that's feeling to be probably killed. Like it needs to be taken out back. No, how do you love them? You give them skills and tools and help them learn to use those skills and tools.
Yeah, that's good. Love it.
Yeah. And so you've written you said a number of books. Your more recent book is Simple Money, Rich Life, right?
Yep.
What are your other ones?
So I a few years back, 7 or 8 years back, I wrote a 31-day devotional called Managing Money God's Way. Just a real simple devotional. Partnered with a guy, wrote a 6-week Bible study many years back as well.
Nice.
This recent book is much more thorough, all inclusive, I think, covering really everything we've done over the last 15 years. So much wider range.
A 21-day kickstart to stress-free money management.
Yeah.
The truth
That's
is,
what we're all after, right?
There's not a person out there that doesn't need that. And this is from a biblical worldview, and you use scripture in it. And you're very much teaching about an ethic, a belief system about money, which I love that.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So what have you learned in the process of putting this together?
Just in terms of writing?
Writing and kind of compiling the last 15 years and all your blogs and just all you've done.
Yeah. I mean, a lot. I think, because I've been in the position where I've had to wrestle with, like this topic of money is one that so few people want to talk about. And then you add in the Bible, the Christian component, and that just adds another layer of, oh, just don't go there. Just don't talk about that, and I think part of the reason is that we see so many bad examples of what can happen when this goes wrong, and so we just want to have this knee-jerk reaction of these two things should never go together. We should never talk about it. But, the fact is that Jesus talked about money all the time. There's over 2,000 verses in the Bible about money. It's more than heaven and hell combined.
Wow.
And so, what does that say? To me, it says it's something that we should be talking about. We should have dialogue around these things, and we should be figuring out how to use it for His glory. I think that's what it comes down to for me. It's I want, look at the parable of the talents. It's some people say it's not about money, and it's all right, maybe it's not exclusively about money, but there's a lot of things that we are stewarding. There are a lot of things that we are responsible for managing that God has put into our care and entrusted to us. And I am convinced that money is one of them. It's yes, our kids, yes, our spouses, yes, our time, all of our resources, but money is a resource that we have the opportunity to glorify Him with how we are managing it. And so for me, that's just been, I don't know, something that's just shifted my thinking and how I make financial decisions as I have thought more through a stewardship mindset. And, when I really come to it and acknowledge that everything I have, from the money in my bank account to the kids I'm responsible for to the air that I breathe, it's all God's. I'm simply a manager of what his stuff.
Yep.
And that helps me make better financial decisions, more from an eternal perspective. Do you know what I mean?
I love that. That's such a great mind shift. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
What about in your relationship with your wife? What has that journey been like? Has it just been smooth sailing? You guys are just always.
Nope. Um, no, I don't think there's many people listening who would say that. Yeah, my wife, my spouse, our money thing has been smooth sailing the entire time. Now that said, I feel like we've grown so much. We've gotten into a really good place, but we're very, very different in how we think about money.
Part
Like
of
most
God's sense of
couples,
humor. Part of God's sense of humor.
yeah, it absolutely is. Like most couples, we come from different backgrounds financially. And it's like I don't know that I've met a single couple who said, "Yeah, me and my spouse like 100% think exactly the same on money." Like I don't think it exists.
Nope.
And so we have different backgrounds, different beliefs about money, and so just like anything else, like getting married, you're looking to establish unity. And I think it's so powerful in our financial life when we're in unity with our spouse. Like it's a big, big deal. Yeah. And so we were after that and we were fighting for that. And I think that's one of the things I'm often talking to couples about too is, the default is to fight against your spouse, but you want to fight with your spouse for unity, not fight, get your spouse to change and be exactly the way you want. It's like, how can we fight to be in unity? What does that look like? What does that look like when we can fully get on the same page or just start moving more on the same page, And so for us, honestly, a big part of that for me, because I'm more of the numbers guy, the spreadsheet nerd, whatever. I'm more of that guy, the saver, where she is the, like, it's going to burn a hole in my pocket. I got to spend it as fast as possible, And so going into that, I thought, just like a lot of people like me think, all right, she's wrong. You got to control her. Like she's going to blow all your money. Like she's going to destroy the financial situation. And that's what I thought too, And so as a result, like I kind of made our financial decisions through that lens that she doesn't have anything to add to this financial discussion. And we're going to be better off if you just stay out of it and just let me do it and just do what I say, that type of thing.
Yikes.
And so that doesn't, but like, this is the interesting thing. She was actually interested in just handing it off because she didn't want to be involved. But anyway, in all that, like we both kind of came to the spot where we realized we both need to be involved. And it's like, all right, I have more of a natural gifting here, so I can drive a little bit, but she needs to be providing input on this. And I need to be yielding to that. Right. And so what this looked like for us was me getting to the point, and God just kind of revealed this to me, that she actually has a whole lot of value to add to our financial situation, and that he placed her in our marriage for my benefit. Amen. And so if I'm not listening to what she has to offer, like I'm missing out. And ultimately I just discovered that like I'm not healthy financially without her. Like I tend to just save everything up for the future, not enjoy today, not be spontaneous enough, not do all this stuff to really live and enjoy the moments that God has given us. And she's really good at that. And when I've applied and allowed her to influence my thinking, influence the budget a little bit more, like we just live a healthier, and me specifically, I live a healthier, more balanced financial life. So she's a huge asset. And then the cool thing, of course, is that as I've done that and yielded towards her, like she's yielded more and been more open to like being willing to control spending in certain areas and to save more in certain things. And so it's just worked really well to help us find a place of balance.
And that's a great description of what it needs to be. It's that yielding to each other versus what you mentioned of, you just need to do what I say and we're going to all be good because I'm right.
Yeah.
One of the things I've been thinking a lot about in the last few months has been like, we are so, everything we believe, we think we're right 100% of everything we believe, which would make all relationships impossible. All relationships, unless we find a cookie cutter, the same person as us. She has talent, skills, perspective, things that you don't see, and vice versa. And so to be able to yield to that brings incredible beauty and growth as two separate people, but also as an us.
Yep. Yep.
That's
No, it's been a big deal for us. It's helped us a whole lot. Um, yeah. So I'm just really thankful for God's kind of gentle conviction and showing me, where it's off.
Mhm. So then what's changed, like as kids have come into the picture and you're still in that stage of young ones, very young ones, and that's busy, busy,
Mhm.
busy, exhausting. Um,
Yeah.
I guess, how has this influenced how you've maybe even for you been more spontaneous or been more playful, if you will?
Yeah. No, yeah. One of the things that changed for me, and this is kind of all along, like, I mean, you know how God does, like he's bringing things to us when we need them at the right time. And so there was a book I read just a couple years ago that helped me think through this a little bit more too. Just this idea of, so I just turned 41 and something happened when I turned about 40. I didn't have like a midlife crisis in the traditional sense, but I started just asking the question because I've done good job saving. Like I spent the last 15 plus years like leaning in that direction, to offset my younger years of just not thinking about money at all. I transitioned and it's like, all right, I need to save for the future. I need to be smart with my money. I need to do blah, blah, blah. And so I've been doing that for 15 years. And that's my new natural inclination is leaning in that direction. And so as I was thinking about all this, uh, I don't know. I just began evaluating my decisions a little bit differently. It's like, all right, I'm 40 now. I have these little kids. I don't know how many years I have left. I mean, hopefully 40 more years, 50 more years, whatever. But at the same time, 20 years from now, there are going to be things that I'm maybe can't even do, that I could do right now, like physically, like at 41 versus at 61, or especially in 30 years. Like, and so the money that I save or save up for retirement that might be used at that point, there's a whole lot fewer things that I can do. And I have a limited window now, especially with my kids. And
Yes.
you know what I'm talking about here, like a limited amount of time with them to do certain things. And and so anyway, I don't want to get to the point where I'm 60, 70 years old regretting that we didn't spend some of that money now,
Right.
when I'm already doing so good saving for the future. Now, there's certain people who need to hear the opposite,
Exactly.
there's some people listening who's like, all right, you need to save some money for retirement. Like it's going to get here, but for me, that was a lesson that I needed to hear. And I think that's what's so cool about God is that he gives us the lessons that we need when we need them.
When I was thinking the same thing where you said the opposite. I was like, some people need to hear the opposite. I mean,
Yeah.
we work at a Christian university and we've never had a whole bunch of money. So one of our values when we moved to Oregon, because all of our family lives in Texas and Georgia, was road trips.
Yep.
Every summer we road trip across country, except for
Wow.
this past summer because the gas prices were made that harder. But and we can feel it. We feel the missing of that adventure that we didn't get
Yeah.
to have this summer because of that. But it was also a financial choice with high gas prices. We had to choose
Yep.
spend our money that way or do we actually not? And so we chose not to. And there's times we're already regretting it this summer,
Yeah.
but because it's a value of we actually bought a house that's cheaper because of that. We made sure
Yeah.
our choices there, but we have no retirement. So like
Yep.
so what's that look like where we don't have that kind of
Yep.
future focus
Yep.
where like our parents in that generation have done a much better job of kind of planning for that, at least in our family.
Yeah.
So in each family, and each person listening needs to hear something different there. Some
Yeah.
of you need to stop playing and need to start saving. Some of you
Yeah.
learn how to play, but it's that relationship with money um,
Yeah.
becomes a hot topic. What I see as a counselor and therapist and coach with families and couples is the tension between them each other with
Mhm.
money. They spend it differently, and they actually think that's a deal breaker. Like,
Yeah.
no, if
Yeah.
you were both the same, is like you cancel each other out. We don't
Yeah.
want two of the same people. How to bring out the beauty of the differences.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I am curious what your thoughts are on this, but I've just found that so many people, like part of that tension comes from the fact that we are making money. We're putting money in the place where God should be. So we're looking at money as our security. We're looking at money as the thing that makes us feel important. We're looking at it, from all these different perspectives when it's like, that's the thing we should be putting on God, our identity. Like these are the things that so many people are looking to money for. And then when you are around a spouse who threatens that,
Yes.
like, I don't know, it's not surprising that people lash out and that stuff comes out, you know?
Yep. Well, and I think that you putting that kind of in that perspective of that's almost our God. It's what we worship. So then what about our culture where we're always pushing about retirement and saving for the future
Mhm.
and all of that? Is that potentially an idol?
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely can be. I mean, I see people all the time who turn that into an idol. You know, even paying off debt. Like
Mhm.
that's the thing is that anything can become an idol. Like I think during our debt payoff process, like I think I probably went just a little bit too far where because I remember finding myself feeling like I will be content when.
Mm,
And you know, and I really think anytime we're in a situation where our contentment hinges on anything else other than Jesus, like we're just drifting just a little bit where we shouldn't be. And so that's what it is for me. Like I was not going to be content until we had our debt paid off. Now that motivated me. I mean, you know, and again, like paying off debt is a very healthy thing. Like this is a
great.
biblical thing.
Yes.
But when it's in the wrong place,
Right.
like, yeah. And so, absolutely, I think any financial goal can be, you know?
And that's where, if you think of the different things we spend money on and education, that's a difficult one right now. We're in
Yep.
that season looking at in 2 years, our oldest goes to college, and I work at one, so that's going to help. But the amount of friends of ours who are, asking that question and the current culture of debt when it comes to college, I personally would not send my kids to a state university anywhere, mainly because of
Yeah.
what happens there in the indoctrination. But the amount of Christian universities I wouldn't trust either that are no longer
Yeah.
holding to a biblical. But then that's, for some people, they go, well, that's overprotective. It's like I'm protecting a young mind that's growing and maturing, and then they're let go and free. That's a value where some have
Yeah.
value about, like what the money they have in their bank, or they have to have that nice car and it's always shiny clean. And we each have our
Hmm.
different kind of areas of values.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, we all spend money according to what we value, what's most important to us. Like,
Yeah.
everybody does. So,
Yeah, I've every shirt I own has Harley on it. Uh, I I've ridden motorcycles since I moved to America when I was 17. I grew up in
yeah.
Chile, missionary kid,
Oh, wow.
and I wanted my freedom because in Chile I could go anywhere. The bus systems. So from middle school, I was going all over the city, and all of a sudden I'm 18 and I can't go anywhere without my mom. So
Yeah.
I ended up buying a motorcycle, fell in love. So I've always wanted a Harley. Finally bought one a few years ago, and it's funny, I miss my Honda. Like
Really?
it's great. I love it. It's got 8 hangers, it's loud, but my Honda was more reliable and my Honda was more so it's interesting because that became an idol.
Yeah.
I had to really humble myself and really realize that became something outside of, well, putting that in the place of God, and anything
Yeah.
can become that. Some
Yep.
of my students, I've told them, I teach at university, I was like, you need to go. You don't need to be here
Yep.
because you've made education an idol, and this is you're at the wrong place, wrong time. For others, it's the opposite. They need to go now because they've been called into a certain job or ministry or something.
Yeah. Yep. It's so true.
So, what have you seen with struggles with couples? What are some of the things that have come up with that you've seen with couples when it comes to?
Uh, yeah. I mean, I think one of the things I was just talking to a couple the other day who he was a bit more like me and just didn't just a little bit more of a saver and realized that things were tight for them and was trying to do everything he could in his own strength to take care of his family, to provide for his family, to make sure they had money for everything. And she was a bit more of a spender and just spending on whatever and just a little bit not reined in.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And I feel like I see that a lot, like where one couple tends to be a spender and the other one's trying, and they both are like pulling in opposite directions. Uh, and that just creates a lot of tension. And it's really common, but it's really frustrating if you're in that situation on both sides. It's not
Right.
like, only one of them's frustrated. And one of the things that we were talking to them about that I think really helps in situations like that is, okay, you spend money differently, but what are the common things you can agree on? You know, so like, is it giving and generosity? Like, is that something that motivates you? Is it stewarding? Like, is it trying to honor God with your finances? Is it like, what are the things where it's like, all right, we agree on this, and use that as a starting point to kind of look for more ways to connect and to bridge, you know, because I think it's so easy just to look at how different we are and how different we spend money and why did they just run out and buy that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But that's a great starting point, is like, look for these areas of common ground and start building a bridge. One of the things I'll say, just because this is so helpful, this is so helpful for so many couples, is having your own personal spending money. Okay, so this was a game. This reduced our money fights by probably 90%. Linda and I, like, overnight, this instant practical thing. And so what we did is we created two separate budget categories in our thing, and and I'm all for like having joint accounts with both your names on it. I'm not a big fan of hiding money from your spouse or any of that thing, but I think it's really important that you are still individual human beings and you have some money allocated for you to spend without asking the other one for permission, based on the things that you value and find important. And so for Linda, that might mean going to Chick-fil-A and getting a milkshake every day of the month and burning all of the money that for her spending money. For me, it's going to Lowe's and buying a table saw or whatever. But like, the point is that I don't have to ask her about buying that table saw if I have that money in my spending money, and she doesn't have to ask me about buying her 25th milkshake from Chick-fil-A, you know? And whereas before we did that, we were constantly fighting about these things. It's like, why would you do that? We got to buy groceries next week. You know, it was that discussion over and over and over again. And so that thing helped us so much. We talked to so many couples that one simple thing makes such a big difference.
And that's probably a good entry point, what you just said there, of what is it that you fight about the most? So if it's like overspending at Chick-fil-A, they're actually finally building a Chick-fil-A near here in our town. We haven't had one near us ever.
Good for you.
So my wife's already gone and she's excited, but yeah, so like here it's coffees, like the coffee little kiosks.
Yeah.
If that's your value, you want to spend your money there. It's like, how do you actually set up parameters? Some people, it needs to be very low because you don't have enough money. Like, it's not a big amount. That's Dave Ramsey talks about the blow money. It's like you need that little. I remember I would always stress out earlier in our marriage when I had to ask for permission to go spend $2.50 to rent a movie.
I know. Exactly.
And when the streaming stuff or Redbox came out, it was like $1. I can, not ask permission now, or streaming. Yay. It changed that fight, but we still pay these monthly fees now, which some of us need to get rid of those monthly fees because you can't afford them. But at least the fight's gone. So this blow money, or this personal money, really does change that. The truth is, we're always going to spend our money different. We have different values over that. So to remove that,
and I kind of think that's healthy.
It is.
You know,
I think we need to value, like, help them see that, not we need to change you. Which is actually where I think a lot of counseling and coaching and mentoring goes wrong, is we try to make them, do it the way we did it, or not, or some model of something we've read somewhere. To help them become the best person that they can be, and it's living within certain parameters even.
I think it's so good.
Okay, so we got the kind of this little bit of spending money. You mentioned also paying off debt. That's a big deal. You guys you're very open about kind of some of your story, and you guys paid off a lot of money, a lot of debt. What's that journey like?
So I think for us, people often ask us, we had our debt journey. So we had a bunch of credit card debt, car loans, student loans, all that stuff. And we began paying it off. And one of the things that was interesting to me is I get this question asked, should I stop tithing so I can pay off my debt? And I remember when we were paying off that initial chunk of debt, all that consumer debt and stuff, And basically God kind of challenging us to give more. So we had been tithing and we felt like God was challenging us to give more while we were paying off our debt. Like this
Nice.
makes no sense. This is bad math. Like, come on, God.
Yes.
This does I don't think you understand how this works. But as we did that, like we ended up paying off that debt years faster than we should have. Like
That's awesome.
and and that's the thing that I think it's really important for us as believers to understand that kingdom math is different than the world's math. Like
Bingo.
it doesn't make sense. And so many people never get to experience that because they don't take those steps of faith. Um, really, a lot of times in giving, a lot of times it's just in areas of giving. And so, while we were paying off debt, like that was one of the biggest things. And then the next round of that, like when we were trying to pay off our house, it was the same thing. God called us to increase our giving. And and we saw the exact same thing where that debt got paid off so much faster when it should have made no sense mathematically. But God did it that way, you know? So anyway, so my encouragement to people who are paying off debt is, you know, it's not necessarily give more money, but it's pray about it. Ask God what his plan is, you know, because if he's calling you to give more, like run with that. Like he's not doing that to take something from you to make your life more difficult.
Yeah.
Like he's got something in the works if he's calling you to do that, you know?
And a lot of times what he's got in the works is he's saying, do you trust me?
Yep.
And the truth
Yep.
is in those moments we don't.
Yeah.
We're exposed as frauds in a sense. And I think kind
Well,
of
yeah.
more.
And this is where,
Go ahead.
yeah, where money can become an idol.
Yep.
Like this is that thing. Like, I mean, if we're taking an honest look at how we're making those decisions, like, do I not trust God? Do I trust having that money in the bank account more than I trust that God's going to come through? And, you know, and I've been there so many times, like where, you know, we haven't done it right and where we have put our trust more in the money and didn't make those tough decisions the way we wish we would have. But I think when it comes down to it, I think that's part of what that is.
And for some people, it's not necessarily the money, but it's the status or it's whatever that
Oh,
money
yeah.
gives them. It's something external. They
Yep.
have to have that brand of car because it says something to the neighbors or to friends. It's
Yeah.
so interesting, or they're not happy if without a certain house. I remember when I first moved to Georgia, we used to live there. I met in our Sunday school class, I think it was three different wives came up to me, and it was the same story. The story was we were, married, and we found out we're having a baby, so we sold our house, our 2,000 square foot house, and got a 3,000 square foot house in anticipation of this baby. And then they all said this, and now I have to work. And I was
Yep.
like, oh, and you could just see the longing in their hearts to not have to work. It's different to get if you get to work and you want to work and you choose to
Yeah.
work, but you
Yep.
could just see that burden of I have to now to pay for this thing that I wish we didn't have. And it's
Yeah.
amazing how kids take up that 1,000 square feet, but it's pretty much
Yeah.
what they're saying. It's like, no, there's
Yeah.
so many, I go to any other country and you see how spoiled we are.
Yeah. No,
Um,
yeah. I mean, and adding to that, I mean, I remember a story talking to a pastor friend of mine. He said he had somebody in his congregation who basically he was going to hire him and offered him a job, and they were both excited. The guy he offered the job to agreed and like said, "Yeah, I feel like this is God calling me to do this." So they start talking about salary, and the guy says, "I am sorry, but like I can't take this position. Like I have too much debt. Like the debt payments alone. Like I can't take this position." And anyway, and I just remember thinking like God's calling him to do this thing, and he feels like he can't do it because of all this debt that he has. And it's just scary. It's scary thinking about it. And the flip side of that is like, to me, that gives me motivation to want to pay off debt, to want to be in a healthy financial situation, all these different things, to be more free to
Right.
go wherever God has for us to go and to do whatever and give to whatever, you know?
And that's where I don't hear that from a lot of people I talk to. They're not
Yeah.
looking for where God's leading them. It's
Yep.
wherever I think I'll be happy or where I want to go.
Yeah.
And it doesn't tend to
Chasing your
go
own
well.
happiness.
Yeah, it doesn't go well. And that's, to me, if I could give that one message to people, it tends to be it really centers around go where God tells you to go. I don't care where
Yep.
that is.
Yeah, I
And
mean, and I'm convinced, I mean, Romans 8:28, you can take this a whole bunch of different ways. Like God causes all things to work together for good, to those who love him are called according to his purpose. It's like I really believe that when God's calling us to do something, that's where the most joy and fulfillment and happiness is going to be. It's going to be in that thing, even though it might look like it's not. Like God's really smart.
we mentioned the kingdom math. When I met my wife, I was walking with a cane, and I was told by doctors I would never work again. I was working on my district
Wow.
doctoral work. I was trying to live a life. I was trying to work and had a little bit of work, but I was a mess. I had just moved back from Kansas, had to close my private practice. Everything was just kind of falling apart for me. I meet her. 10 months later, we got married, and she married me. And in those 10 months, I was in the hospital 3 times. She married me with all the, I would say, the kingdom math. I came in with
Mm.
$100,000 in debt. I come in with student loan debt. I come in with medical debt. I come in with not a bright future as a, being able to work, all of it against me. To then her, she's been a stay-at-home mom the last 14 years because
Mm.
it didn't pan out as we were told in the time at the time. But it's so humbling to me that
Yeah.
she made that decision based off all the data. Would say this guy is not a good guy to marry. I mean, we did premarital, we met with financial planners to make sure she knew what she was getting into, and it doesn't make sense. And a lot of
Yeah.
times what God's calling us to do is to walk away from maybe that lucrative job or
Yeah.
that incredible pay or that incredible position of status for something much more beautiful, you said, and you're going to find much more joy there. So how we
Yeah.
define these things are really critical.
Yeah. I
Help
mean, and I
people,
think, oh, go ahead.
well, help people think through this. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in my walk with God, I just feel like the common thing I wish everyone understood is just obey him.
Yes.
Like the obedience factor, like
But you got to
it's not
listen
rocket
first.
science.
But you got to
Yeah. No,
listen
yeah,
first.
for sure. But
Oh,
like when you know that God's calling you to do X or Y, like to just do it. Like it's always the best thing. It's always the best thing. And it's like that's where you're gonna find the fulfillment. That's where you're gonna like chasing your own happiness. Like we're never gonna get there. Like God knows better than we do. And I that's one of the things I see like whatever on Instagram or whatever constantly like you do what makes you happy. Like that's it. Just whatever. Just chase your own happiness. That's leave your spouse if it's going to make you happy or whatever, the thing is. Then it's so foolish. It's so misguided. And I don't know how more people don't see that at this point.
I know my wife and I had to make a decision recently. We were offered jobs somewhere else, and to me, the most joyful part about that process is we entered into it 100% saying yes to taking one of these jobs. And in the last hour or so, one of the interviews, the journey together was no. We were gonna say no.
Yeah.
And of
Yeah.
the whole thing, it was so amazing to do it together.
Yeah.
That's the piece I wish couples could hear too, is like you do this together. It's not fun. It's hard. I was on the floor at times, just like hurting because it made no rational sense to say no. It
Yeah.
was better money. It was a healthier university. It was healthier this, health, like all the rationale, closer to family. Yet, God, where do you want to use us? And how
Yeah.
even those decisions impact where our kids might meet spouses, where, all these little factors that we can't control, we try to control of our next steps.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think that, yeah, there's certainly times where we make those sacrifices and we don't see uh, maybe the financial fruit of it, but there are times where there is financial fruit. I mean, because in my case, like I remember getting laid off in 2008, and this blog that I had started the year before and was making $100 a month from
Nice.
total. Like I felt like God said, I want you to become a full time blogger in 2008.
Wow.
And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This doesn't make any sense, God. I've been working on this thing for a year. We're making $100 a month, and you want me to not go find another job and do this. And anyway, but it was an obedience thing, and I obeyed him. And anyway, so that was kind of like the first kind of step. But then, like a month or two later, a friend of mine offered me a job that was paying double what my previous job was paying. And so I'm like, all right, this is my answer to prayer. Like, this is great. Like, I obeyed God. Now my friend who I loved working with, like, he was great, offered me this job that was going to pay double. And I said, I just told him yes, like, let's go do it. And like, as soon as I did, like, I could feel in my heart God say, nope, that's not it. And I just ignored it. I'm like, no, no, this is my answer to prayer. Like,
Yeah.
all this stuff. And anyway, and it's like, it would not go away. And I finally just started praying. I'm like, are you sure, God? He's like, nope, that's not it. Trust me. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I ended up calling the guy back and just saying, I'm sorry, man. I jumped the gun. I'm not supposed to take this job with you. It was one of the hardest phone calls in my life. Like, because we went
We
from
want
whatever.
security. We want
Oh yeah,
security.
no security. Like, and I had no reason to believe at all that this blog was ever going to turn into a full-time living. Um, and that was after, a few months, or probably a month at that point, of $100 a month. Like, it's like, and then that comes in double, my previous job. But anyway, point is that God's smart. Like, he knew. And the truth is, had I taken that job, like, that would have fizzled out. Like, I saw where that went, and that wouldn't have lasted. It wasn't going to last for me. And then the other thing that God was actually trying to do was build a business. And, financially, 9 months later, we were earning what we were in that old day job, which was a miracle in and of itself. And then 6 months later, it was double that. So it's like, it was only about a year and a half later before we were up to that higher salary anyway. And the truth is that, yeah, anyway, so the reason I'm bringing this up is there are times where it makes absolutely no sense, and God does kind of bring in the financial provision. But in our case, like, I would have done it either way, because the impact that we were able to make through starting that business is so much richer and so much deeper than the pushing papers I would have done working for my friend, So, yeah, there's a lot here.
So then what would you say to the person who God really is saying going to the ministry, where that does not pay? And there's a lot of talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
That we're
No,
actually inviting people to come into the ministry, not paying them much, and you kind of get what you get with that.
Yeah.
Not some healthy people oftentimes. So we do.
Yeah.
It's sad to say, we run for the money, and that's not going to give us what we want. Oftentimes the call is into something that's actually not going to pay well.
Yeah, and I mean, we. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What's that? What do we do with that? Like, that's
Yeah.
feels like a dead end.
Yeah. So, yeah, I talk about this a little bit in the book because I know that that's an issue. And the fact is, like you said, or like we're talking about in this conversation, I think the number one thing is to always obey God. Like, that's it. Like, it's when we find ourselves chasing money against God's will, what we know he's calling us to, like, that's never going to be the answer. Like, that, it's just so clear that is not going to be the answer.
Yeah.
And we can always trust God in whatever the thing is. And so in the case of a ministry position where it's like, all right, this is not going to pay well. Like, I don't, it's something that bothers me. Like, I just, like, teachers and other things where it's like such important professions that aren't being paid well. And I think, honestly, as the church, I think that comes on us a little bit, because I feel like it's our responsibility to be taking care of our pastors, to be taking care of people that are working in ministry positions. Whether or not that's directly giving them money, but maybe it's like, all right, I have a vacation rental that I'm not going to use. Let's let our pastor go. Like, whatever the thing might be, to how can we continue to bless them? That's a tangent. But the thing that I do encourage people to do, we talk about this in the book a little bit, is like, so John Wesley, and this is kind of what the book is based off of, his framework. So he had this framework that he followed where he said, I earn as much as I can by speaking and by writing. And interesting fact about John Wesley, he was actually one of the most wealthy people in all of England. So not most wealthy preachers, but wealthy people in terms of his monthly salary at his high point, which was crazy to think about. Like, so he must have been just like preaching and writing up a storm, But anyway, so he said, I earn as much as I can. And he said, I reduce my expenses as much as I can by living frugally so that I can give as much as I can. And so John Wesley, I think the way that he would say it is, take your ministry position. And I know that this, I've been in church life enough to know that the hours required are not always balanced. But I would say, when possible, use your ministry position, and if possible, find a side hustle, find something you can do on the side, a skill or a craft that you can develop to generate some income in addition to, your 40, hopefully 40-hour a week ministry position. And I know, like, I'm not naive to know that there are plenty of people who are like, well, I work 80 hours a week. Like, I've run into them. I've been with them. I know that. And so it all ultimately comes down to placing this in the Lord's hand and understanding some of it's a season, some of it's a time thing. But again, like, continuing to be open to wherever God's leading you. But part of that is, I believe, stepping into alternative forms of income besides just the paycheck from the ministry. Mm-hmm. And I've seen, plenty of people do that well, because we live in an era where it's never been easier to generate a side income, from delivering meals for Uber or from pet sitting on the weekend. Like, there's so many different ways to generate some extra income,
Yeah. I know since I graduated from seminary, I have had 2 to 4 jobs ever since, because of working at Christian universities. But also that was driven by a value of my wife being at home. Actually, it was driven by a value of one of us would be home, because at first, because of my health, it was going to be me at home and her at work, because she had a much better job paying wise. And it's neat to see. If you talk to my in-laws next year have been married 50 years and have been in ministry, pastoral ministry, for 50 years. Wow. How did they do it? Small little church. How? They did it because she had a great job as a teacher with benefits where he didn't have that kind of stuff. And they were a team, and they've never lacked, ever lacked. And it's like a part of that kingdom, I forgot the word I just lost. The value of money, the way that the budget is incredible to think about. We think of wealth. We think of wealth building as kind of the goal, and it's not. It's same as we've been saying, where does God want to use you? You have your unique set of skills, gifting, talent. Where is God going to use you? And that should drive couples. So individually as people, but as couples. And then even what we kind of started talking about is, how do we teach our children? Do we pass this legacy on that they understand? My son, I think it was last year, sophomore year of high school, one of his homework assignments in our homeschool, we do classical conversations, was to do a write-up of, if you were to move out right now, what would it take? So pick your career. So find out what the salary would be, and then kind of what would it be like to live. And no one lived in reality of these kids. You think of the cost of rent, and then you have all the little things that are just you have to pay for gas, and you have to pay for electricity and cable, and your phone, and like they see the world different when they start understanding some of those things, and that starts young, as we instill. A pastor said to not to me, but I heard this and it really impacted me. I always approached money with, because of growing up as a missionary kid, we can't afford that. We can't afford that. I don't even think my parents said that, but that's what I took.
Yep.
Then this pastor said, no, you make the choice of saying, we choose to spend our money this way, or we choose not to spend our money this way.
Yep.
So when you walk down that aisle at Walmart and you see the $150 Lego set, which you're like, oh, that's a lot. Or it's, well, if we want that, what else has to go? Yep. Where do we have to sacrifice? What has to change? And if you instill that in your kids young, they have a very different future, which I think is critical and valuable.
Yep. So true. I love that.
And your kids, the age they are, I mean, you probably haven't quite experienced this yet. We, last 2 summers, we needed to paint the exterior of our house. So what do? We have built-in labor.
Yep.
Bought the 5-gallon buckets, and they were paid to paint the house. One of them was actually paying for a TV they broke. So we were keeping track of hours, but it's learning to have value in work, but also it equals a pay. So that changes how they see money.
Yep.
Now, so you mentioned giving too. So tithing plus giving. most people, the numbers are horrifying in church, give way under 10%.
Yeah.
They're not even tithing. And so what would be kind of your, I guess, call to them when it's to think about their finances and to think about their commitments in their finances when it comes to that piece?
My encouragement is to just, well, a couple of different things here. I think read 2 Corinthians 9. I think this is, one of my favorite chapters about giving, specifically in the New Testament. And I think when you understand that we're eternal beings, like Randy Elkhorn had this quote that I really loved. He said, "The greatest deterrent to giving is the illusion that earth is our home." And when you think through that and you understand we're eternal beings, we're on earth for such a slice of time, such a sliver of time, it makes sense to be giving and storing up treasures in heaven and not just spending everything on earth while we're here. So that's a big part of it. And then also, I think it's also good for us to always be stretching in our giving. So for somebody who's giving 2%, 3%, whatever the average is about right now, why not try to increase it by 1%? Yep. Like you won't even feel it. And then maybe a couple months later, go up another 1%. Great. You're not going to regret it and you're not going to feel it. Like I've never met anyone who increases their giving by 1% and says, "Man, I couldn't afford groceries, Bob. It was too tight." Like even for those of us who really have tight budgets, like it's really hard to feel 1% that shift, So that's my encouragement.
Nice. And I just saw the time because I know you have babysitter call to action for people to go to 3daymoneychallenge.com. 3day, the number 3daymoneychallenge.com, and check that out, sign up. And then also your book is available on Amazon and website and all that. What's your website?
Yep. Seedtime.com.
Seedtime.com. Yep. So thank you, Bob, so much for this conversation. Would love to have another one in the future. This is very, very good and helpful.
Yeah. Thanks, Corey. Appreciate it.
Bless you. Bless you and your family.
All right. Take care. See ya.
Thank you for tuning in to the Family Features Podcast. It's been an honor to serve. If you're struggling and in need, Dr. Gilbert provides a free consultation for new clients. Check out his website at healinglives.com to book a call. If this has been helpful to you, please share it, leave a review, and help us get the word out so that we can see lives changed, marriages touched, and more people come into a life-changing relationship with Jesus Christ. For more help and resources, check out Dr. Gilbert's website for books, courses, and more trainings at healinglives.com. Bless you and your family and all God wants to do in and through you. Remember, your marriage and family are worth fighting for. This is Dr. Corey Gilbert. See you next time.